Explain it again. Go on. Maybe this time they'll respect you. Maybe this time they'll nod, smile, pretend they understand, and hand you a little piece of dignity like you earned it. But they won't. Listen carefully. This is not misunderstanding. Misunderstanding can be corrected. It can be clarified. It can be repaired. What they're doing to you is colder than that. They hear you, and then they choose not to care. They watch you explain your tone, your pain, your intentions, your boundaries, and they enjoy the performance. Because every extra sentence is proof. Proof that you are still standing there, begging to be accepted. You say, "That's not what I meant." You say, "Let me explain." You say, "You got me wrong." No, they got you right. Right enough to know that if they stay silent, if they twist your words, if they keep you emotionally cornered, you will keep talking and talking and talking until your self-respect starts sounding like desperation. And do you know what makes it worse? You call this maturity. You call this patience. You call this emotional intelligence. No, this is fear with polished language. Fear of rejection. Fear of being hated. Fear of being left alone with your own silence. So you over-explain, over-defend, over-prove, because somewhere inside you, a terrified part of you still believes that clarity earns mercy. Disgusting. You are negotiating your value with people who already decided to profit from your confusion. So listen to me now and listen well. You will finish this video to the last second. To the last second. And if you are too weak, too distracted, too emotionally noisy to face it now, then save this video, leave, and come back when you're ready to hear the truth without hiding behind excuses. Because the moment you stop explaining, they panic. Silence cannot be controlled. And as always, close your eyes and focus with me carefully. Firstly, the first reason you keep explaining yourself is because you still believe fairness lives inside other people the way it lives inside you. You think if you just speak clearly enough, calmly enough, carefully enough, they'll stop twisting what you meant and finally look at you like a human being. But that's not what usually happens, is it? You say, "No, that's not what I meant." You say, "Wait, let me explain." You say, "You understood me the wrong way. I didn't say that." And they just stare at you. Maybe they raise an eyebrow. Maybe they smirk. Maybe they go quiet on purpose. Because some people do not use confusion by accident. They use it like a tool. A very clean tool. A quiet tool. A tool that makes you work while they stand there, doing nothing. Think about real life. A boyfriend says something careless, cold, disrespectful. The girl reacts. Immediately he says, "You're overreacting." So she starts explaining her tone, her pain, her reason, her memory, her intention, and suddenly the whole conversation is no longer about what he did. It becomes about her reaction. Or at work, someone steals your idea, interrupts you, talks over you in front of everyone. Later, when you try to address it, you start softening every sentence. "I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps I misunderstood. I just wanted to clarify." Clarify what? They already know what happened. This is the trap. You think explanation brings resolution, but in many situations, explanation only reveals your fear of being disliked. And people who hunger for control can smell that fear instantly. They hear the extra words, they hear the nervous laughter, they hear the defensive details nobody asked for. They hear you trying to rescue your image before protecting your dignity. That is why this habit becomes dangerous. Not because explaining is always weak, but because unconscious explaining tells the wrong people exactly where to press. And once they learn that, once they see how quickly you abandon your center just to be seen as good, everything changes. They don't need to fight you. They just need to misread you and wait. Because the moment you rush to explain yourself, you are no longer leading the moment. They are. And that is only the first layer of the disease. Stay with me, because what comes next is where it becomes uglier and much more familiar than most people can handle. Secondly, the second reason you explain yourself so much is uglier. It is not just that you want to be understood. It is that you are terrified, absolutely terrified of being seen as the villain in someone else's story. So the moment tension appears, you rush in with details, context, tone, intentions, history, proof. You start building a defense before anyone even asks for one. Why? Because deep down, you still believe being misjudged is unbearable. And that is exactly why manipulative people keep winning these little psychological games. Real example. A friend cancels on you 3 times, disrespects your time, replies coldly, then disappears. When you finally confront them, instead of saying, "That was disrespectful," you start saying, No, I just meant, maybe I felt a little strange because this has happened before, and I didn't want you to think I was blaming you." Look at that. You entered the conversation with truth, and within seconds you were apologizing for touching it. That is not peacekeeping. That is self-erasure. Another example. Someone insults you in public but wraps it in a joke. Everyone laughs. You feel it. You know it was intentional. But instead of holding the silence and letting their ugliness sit in the room, you smile nervously and explain yourself. "I know you were joking, but I'm just saying, maybe that's not really me. I mean, people misunderstand me sometimes." Pathetic, isn't it? Not because you felt hurt. That part is human. But because you were trained to believe your pain must be presented politely or it does not count. And that is where the sickness gets deeper. You are not only explaining facts, you are explaining your right to feel, your right to react, your right to draw a line. And the more you do that, the more dangerous people learn something about you. That guilt works on you. So they shift the frame. They provoke you, then judge your reaction. They disrespect you, then study your tone. They wound you, then make you explain why you are bleeding. Filthy little trick, isn't it? Oh, but we're not done. Because the moment a person becomes afraid of looking bad, they become easy to control. Very easy. They can be silenced with disappointment, led with shame, bent with confusion. And most people never notice it happening until their personality starts sounding like a permission slip. Stay with me, because the next layer is the one almost everyone denies in themselves. Thirdly, the third reason you keep explaining yourself is because you are still trying to control how people feel about you after the damage is already done. And that is a beautiful little illusion, isn't it? You think if you find the perfect wording, the perfect tone, the perfect sequence of calm, reasonable, harmless little sentences, you can climb inside another person's mind and rearrange their judgment. You can't. Once someone has decided to reduce you, they do not listen to understand you. They listen to edit you. They take one word, ignore 10 others, twist the meaning, and then stand there watching you panic as you try to repair an image they already chose to break. And you help them. That is the humiliating part. You help them. Real example. You set one boundary, just one. You say, I don't like being spoken to like that. Simple, clean, human. But the other person leans back, acts offended, maybe sighs, maybe rolls their eyes, and suddenly you feel the room turning. So what do? You rush in. No, that's not what I meant. I'm not attacking you. I just meant maybe we both got a little emotional. I don't want you to think I'm being difficult. There it is. You had a boundary, and in less than 30 seconds, you turned it into a negotiation. Because you were no longer protecting the truth, you were protecting their comfort. And people notice that. Oh, they notice that very quickly. The moment they realize your biggest weakness is being disliked, they do not need force, they just need disapproval. A disappointed face, a colder tone, a longer silence, a tiny little performance of hurt feelings, and suddenly you are explaining yourself like your life depends on it. Why? Because somewhere inside you, there is still a frightened part that believes conflict means abandonment. That is the root. Not logic, not kindness, not maturity. Fear. Fear that if someone sees you as harsh, selfish, rude, cold, unfair, they will withdraw love, respect, access, approval. So you overcorrect, overclarify, overprove, and in doing that, you hand over the center of the conversation, again and again and again. This is why some people can control you without raising their voice. They don't need to. They know your nervous system will do the work for them. But what happens when a person finally stops trying to manage every mind in the room? That is where things begin to shift. Fourthly, the fourth reason you keep explaining yourself is because you confuse being emotionally honest with being strategically exposed. And those are not the same thing, not even close. You can be honest without unfolding your entire nervous system in front of people who have done nothing to deserve access to it. But that is what you do, isn't it? The moment tension appears, the moment someone goes cold, The moment a face changes, a tone sharpens, a silence stretches just a little too long, you open. You explain your history, your motives, your wounds, your pressure, your stress, your heart. Not because they earned the truth, because you are trying to stop the discomfort. That is the part most people miss. They think they are explaining to create understanding. No, most of the time they are explaining to anesthetize tension. And once you understand that, you start seeing the pattern everywhere. Real example. A woman says to a man, "I need some space today." Simple, healthy, clear. But he goes quiet, acts wounded, says, "Wow, okay, I guess I know where I stand." And suddenly she spirals. No, it's not about you. I've just been stressed lately. I didn't sleep well. I've had a lot on my mind. I still care about you. Look at what happened. She made a clean boundary and then immediately tore it open so the other person would not feel too uncomfortable standing in front of it. Why? Because some people cannot tolerate being misunderstood for even 10 seconds. 10 seconds. That is all it takes. A look, a pause, a disappointed reaction, a small shift in emotional weather, and they begin leaking private truth just to restore harmony. But harmony built on self-exposure is not peace. It is surrender with good manners. Another example. You're in an argument. You say one firm sentence, one, and the other person immediately says, "So now I'm the bad guy?" Classic. Suddenly, the entire conversation is pulled away from what happened and redirected toward how cruel you seem for mentioning it. And because you cannot stand that discomfort, you start explaining. "I didn't say you're a bad person. I just meant the situation hurt me. I understand your side too. Maybe I said it wrong." And there it is again. You are no longer communicating. You are regulating their emotions for them. Do you understand how dangerous that becomes? People begin to feel your reflex. They sense how quickly you rush to soften your own truth, how fast you dilute it, how eagerly you translate your own pain into language that is easier for others to digest. So they stop respecting your first sentence. Why would they respect it? They know the second sentence will weaken it, the third will soften it, the fourth will apologize for it, and the fifth will betray it. That is why constant explaining drains the soul. Not because words are weak. Words can be surgical. Words can be final. Words can cut through fog like a blade. No. The weakness comes when words are used to rescue other people from the consequences of what they did to you. And once that becomes your habit, your truth no longer sounds like truth. It starts sounding like a request to be handled gently. Stay with me, because the next part is where this stops being insecurity and starts becoming addiction. Fifthly, the fifth reason you keep explaining yourself is because at some point, your mind stopped treating explanation like a tool and started treating it like relief. That is when it becomes dangerous. Not when you explain once, not when you clarify something important, not when truth genuinely needs language. No. When your body begins craving explanation the way an anxious hand craves movement. the way a dry mouth craves water, the way panic craves escape. You feel pressure, and your first instinct is not to observe it, it is to speak, fast, too fast, to fix the mood, to soften the room, to correct the impression, to regain control of how you are being seen. And the strange part? For a few seconds, it works. That is why the habit grows. You explain, you over-explain, you flood the silence with context and nervous detail, and your body rewards you with a brief little chemical release. There, good. Maybe now they won't leave. Maybe now they won't hate you. Maybe now the tension will stop. That tiny relief teaches you to do it again, and again, and again. That is how a pattern becomes an addiction. Real example. You send a message to someone important to you. They reply coldly, short, dry, different. Immediately, your stomach tightens, your chest gets hot, your breathing shifts. Your head starts generating explanations and threats at the same time. Did I say something wrong? Should I explain what I meant? Maybe I sounded rude. Maybe I need to send another text. Then you do it. Hey, just to clarify, I wasn't upset earlier. I hope that didn't come off wrong. I've just had a lot going on. I didn't mean anything by it, I swear. You see? Nothing was even confirmed. No direct accusation, no open conflict, just a change in tone. And already your nervous system was on its knees, offering context like a sacrifice. That is not communication. That is dependency wearing the mask of sincerity. Another example. You leave a conversation feeling slightly awkward. Not terrible, not catastrophic, just off. A normal person might let the moment breathe, sleep on it, watch what happens next. But you? No, no, no. You replay every word, every pause, every facial twitch, every tiny shift in energy. Then your mind does what addicted minds always do. It promises relief through one more move, one more message, one more clarification, one more neat little paragraph to clean things up. And so you send it. A beautiful, trembling, overly detailed little confession disguised as maturity. But here is the truth no one tells you. Every time you rush to explain in order to soothe yourself, you train your brain to fear silence more. Because silence could have taught you something. It could have shown you whether the connection was solid or fragile, whether the person was fair or manipulative, whether the tension was real or only your old wound waking up again. But you never stay still long enough to find out. You interrupt the test. You break the silence. You flood the space. You contaminate the evidence. And then you wonder why you keep ending up exhausted around the same kinds of people. Because addicted explainers are easy to train. Easy. Give them distance and they chase. Give them ambiguity and they unravel. Give them a disappointed look and they start proving their humanity like frightened little lawyers begging for a kinder judge. And the worst part? They call it love. They call it honesty. They call it emotional openness. No. Call it what it often is. Anxiety seeking relief through self-exposure. A compulsion, a reflex, a ritual. You do not always explain because the other person deserves clarity. Sometimes you explain because your body is addicted to the momentary comfort of hearing itself try to survive. And once you see that, once you realize some of your communication is really withdrawal from silence, everything starts changing. Because the next question becomes very ugly, very ugly. What happens when you refuse the relief? What happens when the pressure rises, your heart races, your mind screams at you to explain, and you do absolutely nothing? Ah, that is where power begins. Sixthly, the sixth reason you keep explaining yourself is because somewhere in your body, not just your mind, conflict still feels like danger. Not discomfort, not awkwardness, danger, real danger. The kind that makes your chest tighten before your thoughts even form. The kind that makes your mouth go dry, your breathing change, your tongue stumble over simple words. So when someone looks at you the wrong way, when their tone drops, when they go cold or sarcastic or weirdly quiet, your body reacts first. Not your wisdom, not your logic, your body. And that body says, fix it. Fix it now. Say something, explain, clarify, make the threat go away. That is why sometimes you start talking before you even know what you're trying to say. You hear yourself saying, no, I mean, that's not really what I was trying to... Wait, let me say it better. I mean, Listen to that little verbal collapse. That frantic little reaching. It feels like honesty. It feels spontaneous. It feels human. And yes, it is human, but it is also revealing something. It reveals that pressure makes you abandon structure. It reveals that tension pulls you out of your center. It reveals that the fear of rupture makes you rush to patch the room before you even understand what is actually broken. Real example. You say no to someone, politely, reasonably, nothing cruel, and they do not yell. They do not insult you. They just change. They get quieter. Colder. Their face stiffens a little. Their energy pulls back. And immediately you feel it. That drop. That little stab in the stomach. That tiny internal alarm. So you start leaking explanations. It's not personal. I just have a lot going on. I wish I could. I don't want you to think I don't care. Do you see it? You said no, but your body could not tolerate being seen as the cause of disappointment. So the no did not remain a no. It became a negotiation wrapped in guilt. And people learn from that very quickly. They learn that your boundaries are technically there, but emotionally unstable. They learn that if they act hurt long enough, you will start doing the work for them. Not because they are powerful, because your discomfort is. Another example. You confront someone gently about something real, something obvious, something any sane person would admit. Instead of owning it, they tilt their head, give you that look, and say, wow, okay, I didn't realize you saw me that way. And your whole system trips. Because now the topic is no longer what they did. Now the topic is your tone, your harshness, your interpretation, your supposed cruelty. And if you are not careful, you start spiraling in real time. No, that's not what I meant. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I just meant the situation felt off, that's all. Maybe I'm explaining this badly. Exactly. You are explaining the explanation now. That is how deep the reflex goes. And the worst part is, some of you think this makes you the mature one because you stayed calm, because you kept talking, because you tried to understand both sides. Maybe. Or maybe you were just too frightened to let the silence expose who was actually being unreasonable. That is what most people never test. They never let the silence stand long enough. Never let the discomfort breathe long enough. Never let the other person's reaction reveal itself fully. Because silence is terrifying when your body has been trained to think, if they are upset, I am in danger. If they are disappointed, I must repair it. If they pull away, I must explain faster. But no. Not every cold tone is a crisis. Not every misunderstanding deserves a defense. Not every disappointed face is a command. And not every silence should be interrupted. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do, the most adult thing, the most psychologically clean thing, is to feel the pressure rise. Feel your mouth preparing its little desperate speech. Feel your chest begging for relief, and still say nothing. Because what speaks after that silence is usually far more truthful than everything that came before it. Seventhly, the seventh reason you keep explaining yourself is because you still think truth wins by being longer. That is one of the oldest mistakes frightened people make. They believe more words create more reality. More details create more innocence. More context creates more fairness. So when someone doubts you, challenges you, twists you, questions your tone, your motive, your intention, you do not become clearer. You become longer. And longer is not always clearer. Sometimes longer just means weaker. Real life. Someone says, "You're being dramatic." A clean person might answer, "No, I'm being direct." Done. But you start constructing a whole emotional museum. No, I only reacted that way because of what happened before, and because lately I've been under pressure, and maybe it came out stronger than I meant, but if you look at the full context, what I was really trying to say was, there it is. You took one solid truth and buried it under explanation until even you no longer sound convinced by it. Why? Because a part of you believes short truth looks rude, firm truth looks dangerous, simple truth looks selfish. So you decorate it, you soften it, pad it, apologize around it, wrap it in nervous humanity and trembling little disclaimers until it no longer lands with force. And then you wonder why nobody respects your words. Of course they don't. They cannot feel your center because you keep abandoning it in the middle of the sentence. You begin in truth, then panic, then start editing yourself while speaking. That is why you hear these little cracks. I mean, no, wait. That's not exactly... what I'm trying to say is, you know what I mean. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. Those are not always harmless speech habits. Sometimes they are symptoms. Symptoms that pressure has entered the room and your nervous system has started pulling your words apart before they can stand. And manipulative people love that. They love when your sentence starts bleeding before it finishes, because now they do not even have to dismantle your position. You are doing it for them. Another example. You tell someone, "I didn't appreciate that." Simple, human, accurate. And they look at you like you've committed murder. Maybe they go quiet. Maybe they smile that little smile. Maybe they say, "Wow, okay." And suddenly you start expanding. "No, I'm not angry. I'm just saying, maybe the way it happened felt a little disrespectful. But I know you probably didn't mean it like that. And maybe I should have said something sooner. I just..." Now listen carefully. Your first sentence had dignity. Everything after that was fear trying to protect you from the consequences of having dignity in front of the wrong person. This is why so many people exhaust themselves, not because they speak, because they keep using speech to outrun the discomfort of being briefly misperceived. And that race never ends. Because no matter how much you explain, a committed mind will still misunderstand you if misunderstanding gives them power. So the real question is not, how do I explain this better? It is, why do I need so many words before I allow my own truth to stand? That question, that ugly little question, is where the performance starts collapsing. Because the next layer is even more humiliating. Not what they do with your explanations, but what you secretly hope those explanations will buy you. Eighthly, the eighth reason you keep explaining yourself is because you secretly hope explanation can purchase safety. Not truth, not clarity, safety. You hope that if you are reasonable enough, soft enough, detailed enough, careful enough, people will become gentler with you. They will say, "Oh, now I see. Now I won't judge you so hard. Now I won't pull away. Now I won't punish you for having needs, limits, reactions, standards." But people do not always become kinder when you reveal more. Some become hungrier. Because every extra explanation tells them something. Where you feel guilty, where you feel weak, where you are easiest to bend, what tone makes you panic, what silence makes you spill, what kind of disapproval makes your whole system start performing for mercy. And yes, that is the word, mercy. A lot of explaining is not communication. It is a quiet plea for mercy, disguised as maturity. Real example. You tell someone you are hurt. Instead of meeting you there, they go cold and say, "You're making a big deal out of nothing." That should tell you something about them. But instead, you start selling your pain like a lawyer with a trembling voice. "No, I just meant because of the timing and because of what happened before, and maybe it hit me differently than it should have, and I know you didn't mean..." Look at that. You are trying to make your wound acceptable enough to be treated. You are trying to earn softness by making your pain easier to digest. And some people will let you do that for hours. Hours. Because the more you explain, the more they remain above you, waiting to decide whether your feelings deserve recognition. That is why the habit becomes humiliating. Not because explaining is always wrong, because you start explaining from underneath, from a lower position, from the posture of someone asking, Is this finally enough for you to stop being hard on me? Another example. You make one mistake, a human mistake, nothing monstrous, nothing evil, just a mistake. A healthy person addresses it, fixes it, moves forward. But your kind of mind, no. It starts producing speeches, long speeches, over-careful speeches, over-honest speeches, apologetic speeches with side notes, context, childhood weather reports, emotional footnotes, and little stumbles like, I mean, that's not an excuse. I just thought maybe if I explain what was happening in my head. There it is again, the hope. The hope that enough self-exposure will reduce the punishment. And that hope is expensive. Because while you are busy trying to buy softer treatment with language, you stop watching something much more important. Whether the other person ever intended to be fair in the first place. That is the trap. Explanation keeps your eyes on your own performance. It keeps you editing yourself, refining yourself, softening yourself, proving yourself. Meanwhile, you fail to study them, their appetite, their coldness, their games, their patterns, their strange enjoyment when you begin to scramble. You keep asking, how do I say this so they won't hurt me? Instead of asking, why do I keep giving important parts of myself to people who become more powerful when I do? That question changes everything. Because once you really ask it, once you really feel the ugliness of it, something inside you starts pulling back. Not from truth, from over-offering truth to the wrong hands. And then you begin to understand something almost nobody wants to admit. Some explanations are not acts of honesty. They are bargaining attempts. A bargain that says, if I reveal more of myself, maybe you will hurt me less. If I make my intentions perfectly clean, maybe you will stop twisting them. If I become transparent enough, maybe you will finally become safe. Maybe. Or maybe unsafe people simply become more accurate shooters when you hand them the map. And when that realization finally lands, when it really lands, you stop feeling proud of how much you can explain. You start becoming very, very careful about who gets the longer version of you. Because what comes next, what comes after that, is the moment you realize not everyone is entitled to your inner world just because they demanded access to it. Ninthly, the ninth reason you keep explaining yourself is because you still believe everyone deserves access to your inner world once they demand it. That is a dangerous belief, not noble, not mature, dangerous. Because the moment you assume every accusation deserves a defense, every disappointed face deserves an explanation, every cold reaction deserves your emotional paperwork, you stop treating your inner life like something valuable. You start treating it like public property. Anybody can step forward, question you, pressure you, tilt their head, give you that offended little look. And suddenly there you are, opening drawers they did not earn the right to see. Your reasons, your fears, your intentions, your private logic, your emotional history, your weak spots, your pressure points, all of it, offered too quickly, offered too cheaply, offered because someone made you feel like silence was suspicious. And that is how people end up overexposed and still unseen. Real example, a parent, a partner, a friend, a boss, someone with emotional weight in your mind, asks, why are you being distant? Now maybe the real answer is simple. Maybe you are tired. Maybe you are disappointed. Maybe you notice something and need space. Maybe you just do not trust the mood. A grounded person might say, I need some room right now. Done. But you begin unlocking every door, No, it's just that lately I've been feeling a little overwhelmed, and maybe part of it is because of that thing you said before, and also because I've been under pressure, and I don't want you to think it's all your fault. I just... There, again. You gave a hallway when one sentence was enough. Why? Because a part of you still thinks if someone questions you, they automatically deserve the full archive. No, they do not. Questioning you is not the same as earning access to you. Demanding clarity is not the same as deserving intimacy. And some people know exactly how to exploit that confusion. They do not ask because they care. They ask because questions are crowbars in the hands of the wrong person. One question opens a crack. Your guilt widens it. Your fear tears it open. And before long, you are handing over emotional information that can be used later to shame you, corner you, manipulate you, or quietly rank how easy you are to control. Another real example. Someone confronts you aggressively about a boundary you set. Not respectfully, not curiously, aggressively. What is your problem lately? Why are you acting different? What's wrong with you? A healthier nervous system hears the aggression and slows down. But yours? It speeds up. It thinks, answer quickly, make this less tense, prove you are not the threat. So you start explaining from inside pressure. And words born under pressure usually reveal more than truth requires. You mention things you did not plan to mention. You soften things that should have stayed firm. You confess confusion that did not need confessing. You say, I don't know, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I just took it the wrong way. Beautiful. Not because it is strong, because it is tragically human. You are trying to survive the moment by making yourself easier to enter. And that is the part almost nobody notices. Every unnecessary explanation is a kind of unlocked door. Not always, but often. A door that says, here is how I process guilt. Here is how I panic. Here is where I doubt myself. Here is how quickly I abandon my first instinct when you push back hard enough. So let me say something clearly. Privacy is not dishonesty. Restraint is not cruelty. Not answering every emotional demand in full detail is not coldness. Sometimes it is intelligence. Sometimes it is dignity. Sometimes it is the only thing standing between your inner world and someone else's appetite. Because not everybody asking for your reasons wants to understand your reasons. Some want leverage. Some want reassurance. Some want obedience. Some want to hear you work hard enough to prove they still have power over your state. And once you see that, really see it, you stop handing out the deeper version of yourself just because the room became tense. And if you are still here, good. That already says something about you. Because most people do not stay long enough to hear the part that hurts. They leave the moment the truth stops sounding soft. They leave the moment the mirror stops flattering them. They leave the moment silence starts pointing at things they have spent years trying not to see. But you stayed. You stayed through the pressure, through the discomfort, through the ugly parts, through the moments where it started feeling less like a video and more like something was quietly peeling the excuses off your face. That matters. So thank you. Not in the shallow way people say it, not in that empty, polite, automatic little way. I mean it. Thank you for finishing this video. Because if you made it this far, then somewhere inside you there is still a part that wants truth more than comfort. And that part can still become dangerous. Now listen carefully. Do not make the mistake of hearing this and then doing nothing with it. Do not nod along, feel intense for 5 minutes, and then go right back to over-explaining yourself to people who feed on your confusion. No. Take this with you. The next time someone twists your words, the next time someone goes cold and waits for you to start scrambling, the next time your chest tightens and your mouth prepares that long, trembling little speech, notice it. Notice the impulse. Notice the fear. Notice the addiction to relief. Notice how badly your body wants to spill words just to make the tension stop. And then, do something different. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not immediately. Maybe your voice will still shake. Maybe your sentence will still crack a little. Maybe you'll still say, "I mean," before catching yourself. Fine, human, but start. Because every time you refuse to abandon your truth just to make somebody else comfortable, something changes. Every time you let a clean sentence stand without decorating it, something changes. Every time you stop handing your inner world to people who never earned it, something changes. And one day, the people who used to control you with confusion, with silence, with disappointment, with that little wounded performance they wear like a mask, will realize it is no longer working. That is when they panic. That is when they call you cold, different, arrogant, hard to read, hard to reach. Good. Let them. Because some versions of peace only arrive after people lose easy access to you. And if this reached you, if this sharpened something in you, then do 3 things. Leave a like, subscribe, and in the comments, write the title you want me to create next. The one you want opened up, exposed, dissected, turned inside out in the next video. Not a random title, the one that bothers you, the one that follows you around, the one you feel in your chest when the room gets quiet, the one truth you know most people are too afraid to touch. Write that title. I read them, and the next one may be yours. You came here looking for words, maybe for clarity, maybe for defense, maybe for a way to finally understand why you keep giving too much of yourself to the wrong people. Now you leave with something better, awareness. And awareness, once it becomes real, is a very difficult thing to chain again. Now you know.